Terrence Latimer here. I am here today to talk to you a little bit about some of our topics of conversation this week as it relates to text analysis, keyword strategy, and more importantly, running queries in our databases, right, based off of the information that we are looking to gather. Right? The information, the text that we're interested in manipulating or sharing, right? All about information retrieval, how we're turning information into knowledge, right? And then ultimately translating knowledge into wisdom, right? And it becomes super important that we have some, number one, leverage tools, processes, and systems in order to do so. So super excited to be here today, and let's go ahead and jump right into it, right? So I talk in analogies. I'm a writer, not all technologists like this, but we're just gonna go ahead and stick with it, right? And so earlier this week, we talked about this process of text analysis, right? And I'm having a conversation with you all right now, right? And what's crazy is that the brain, this supercomputer that you've got in your head right now, is doing this really incredible thing of consuming the information or receiving the information that I am giving to you, right? And then you are also doing this really cool thing in the process of interpreting or understanding what it is that I am saying, right? And based off of the information that I'm giving to you, right, by speaking to you, that then allows you to go do things with it, right? You can either continue to listen to me, you can, blow me off and turn off the computer. You might, take some of the language that I'm giving to you right now and do some of your own research. You might, try to listen to other people with it, right? But what becomes most important is that if you can speak, if you can read, you can write, for all intents and purposes, you are a data scientist, right? Because you are familiar with this process of analyzing text, right? Well, if we're then talking about how that takes place in, I just gave you an example of, two people doing that. Well, the beauty of the internet and social media and technology is that a lot of text doesn't just have to live in people's brains anymore. It's not just this process of talking or one-way conversations, right? Not only can you ask questions, which is something that we're going to talk about here in a minute, right? But you can leverage tools, systems, databases in order to get that information that you require and analyze the text on your own terms, right? And that's as simple as a process of, let's say you have a book or something like that, right? Well, you can scan and read that text and then take a block of it and run your own search in Google or run your own search somewhere else, right? And that then is the, sort of the next part of our conversation today, which is all about running queries, right? What are some of the ways that we can run searches, right, on our platform or database of choice based off of the information that we are looking to retrieve based off of the problem that we're having, whether it's a lack of information or, whatever it is that we are looking to solve for. And so today's conversation is around queries, integrity constraints, text and text analysis. And this is going to be your short, comprehensive guide as part of our Learn Every Day model. Again, my name is Terrence Latimer. I'm an information communications technology professional. I love all things data, language, communications, operations, and systems. And I'm here to make it those topics that much friendlier for you, right? Because in today's information heavy age, I don't want you being overwhelmed, right? There's a ton of great information out there, and if you don't have the capacity, the ability to understand it, right? Well, then for all intents and purposes, you're overloaded and you feel overwhelmed and you don't want to learn anything, right? But the beauty of language and the beauty of technology is that we can combine these two forces in order to extrapolate knowledge, right? And knowledge can be translated into wisdom, and wisdom is how we add value to others. So the way that I like to think about data is all data really is information, right? And, I then like to break that down a bit more by understanding, well, information can be broken down into, two broad buckets, in my opinion, right? Now, these buckets, more often than not, have to work together in order to create a larger bucket, right? But things to consider is that, in my opinion, data, again, just based off of this analogy of two buckets, right? Data can be bucketed into qualitative data and quantitative data. And just like the names express, right, and you're doing a bit of text analysis right now as you're listening to, what it is that I'm saying, is that qualitative data can describe the qualities of something, right? How something tastes, how something looks, how something smells, right? That is, qualitative data in a nutshell, right? The way that we are storing and collecting and understanding the qualities of an object or subject or something, right? Now, quantitative data is just the quantity of something, how many of something there is, right? The number of something. And, if we are then applying that to a business, right? How large is the business? How many employees is the business? How much revenue have they generated in a quarter, right? Now, the beauty of data science and data analytics, right, is that, typically we don't want to stay in just one bucket of data, right? We don't want to just understand the quality of something, right? Or we don't want to just understand the numbers of something, because typically that is only part of the picture, right? We want the whole picture. Data is so beautiful because it gives us so much information into so many different things, right? And that then is where our databases come in, is that it allows us to, whatever our database is, right? Whether using Salesforce, HubSpot, and for all intents and purposes, and we'll talk about this here in a bit, your favorite social media platform is kind of a database, right? And it definitely has data. They definitely have databases underneath them, right? We'll talk about that here in a bit, right? But it then becomes super important again, like as we are trying to pull information into a subject, pull information regarding a subject or topic into one place, right? E.g. your database, or the place that it is that you are looking to access said information, right? Whether it's qualitative information or quantitative information, the ideal is that we have enough capacity, I should say, to store all the information so that we can understand the dynamic aspects of the data, right? How the quality describes the quantity and how the quantity describes the quality. That then gives us a bigger picture, right? Part of our conversation earlier this week was all around text analysis, right? And text analysis is exactly what it sounds like. It is this process of analyzing the text of something, right? Text-based data. So if we are considering the quality of something, right? Again, I'm a writer. I like to consider things like storytelling, right? What are the stories regarding this piece of information? If we're, again, applying this to, this like a job search, right? What is the story regarding the job that you are interested in applying for? Right? You might be able to take things like the job title, you might take things like, the benefits that you're interested in, right? Those then are, sort of the pieces that help to describe the quality of the information that you are looking to receive, which might be a job description or an organization hiring for a job that you're interested in, right? And then the other component of that then becomes the quantity, right? Understanding how many companies out there are hiring for that type of position, or understanding how much your salary should be for that type of position, or how many employees are going to be working in the team that you're interested in, right? And so again, just sort of using this analogy of someone searching for a job, you then combine both of those pieces of data, right, to then help you analyze the different job descriptions and hiring opportunities that are available to you, right? And so then it leads to the next part of our conversation today, which is all around queries, right? And queries are a great way for us, or searches, right, are a great way for us to analyze and understand the text so that we can, begin this process of pulling in more relevant information to us, right? So that we can then begin this process of gaining the knowledge, right, that is going to be most relevant to us, so that we can then become more wise, right? And so, the way that I sort of think about it is that, this process of searching for a job, you know, you kind of don't know what you don't know. And so, you know, you kind of have an idea of what the information that you're looking for. Like, hey, I'm looking for this job title of a marketing manager, an operations specialist, and, you know, I want to live in this area, and I want to make this much money, and I want to work for a team that is this large, right? Well, then how are you going about that process of finding or discovering, uncovering the relevant information that tells you, like, hey, you are a good candidate for this job, or I'm a good candidate for this job, and I'm going to apply for it, right? And that is why running queries, or, you know, more intelligent queries, in my opinion, becomes so important, right? And so, you know, text analysis is one great way for us to do that. It allows us to filter out the information, right, whether it's qualitative or quantitative information, right, and hold on only to the most relevant information, right? The information that we want to hold on to, that then tells us, like, hey, this information is going to allow me to make a wise or an intelligent choice based off of this process of sort of throwing out or removing the things, the queries that aren't relevant to me. If you're looking for a marketing manager's job, why would you spend any time applying for an operations management job, right? That doesn't make any sense. So the idea then is being super intelligent with a lexicon or a dictionary, right, or standard language queries that you can then leverage, right, so that you can then start pulling in the most relevant information to you. So just going through my notes, I want to make sure I hit everything, right? And that then, excuse me, is the other part of our conversation. We've talked about keywords and phrases, right? Now, keywords and phrases are such an important part of this process. And I want you to be mindful of that, right? You know, it becomes really important based off of the database that you are searching. Again, we've just been using this LinkedIn example, but, you know, depending on your industry, there are a ton of databases out there, right? Okay, so that then leads to the other part of today's conversation, and then I'll go ahead and get you out of here so you go on along your merry way and diving into all things data. But, you know, another concept that I really want us to understand today are integrity constraints. And I'm going to pull up a definition for you so that we can read it out loud. But, you know, just one thing that I want you to be mindful of, right, as it relates to text analysis, as it relates to running queries, right, is that, you know, not only do we want to run more intelligent queries, which I would highly encourage you if you haven't studied SQL at all. You know, I definitely would encourage you to study SQL as a concept as it relates to, you know, some standard ways to run more relevant searches for you, right? So that you can, you know, sort of, again, just make your process of filtering out less relevant information for you easier. But integrity constraints then are all about the way that we are maintaining the integrity of the information found in our database, right? And so again, if we're just sort of considering like the most standard sort of database that most of us probably got started with, at least, well, depending on your generation, typically, again, you know, this is just sort of relevant to, this is all, I'm sort of just speaking from my own perspective. I originally got started with spreadsheets, right? And leveraging spreadsheets or using spreadsheets in order to then develop databases, right? And in 2023, there are a ton of tools out there that you can align yourself with, right? Including, you know, I mean, Google Sheets is a great one. But, you know, Salesforce, you know, your customer relationship management tool, HubSpot, right? These are examples of databases. And for all intents and purposes, your favorite social media platform, right? Whether it's like LinkedIn or Google, they're all databases, right? Or they heavily rely on databases. And databases rely on tools, which, you know, that then, or excuse me, yeah, well, not only do they rely on tools, but they rely on rules. And understanding tools and rules is a huge part of this process, right? You know, what tools can you integrate into your favorite database, right? And what are the rules that you have to follow in order to, you know, most successfully leverage or manipulate the information found in said database, right? And that then becomes, you know, an understanding, you know, some of the rules related to your favorite database. And that then is where this topic of integrity constraints comes in, right? A lot of that is rooted in the way that we are storing our data in our database, right? And what our rules are as it relates to the way that we are storing said data so that we can ensure that the integrity of the data stays good, right? and that it is not constraining us in any different way. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this definition for you. This is found on Simply Learn. And again, this has some relevance to SQL, which again is just something that I would encourage you to study on your own time. But integrity constraints, just diving into the definition. Integrity constraints are the protocols that a table's data columns must follow. They are used to restrict the types of information that can be entered into a table. This means that the data in the database is accurate and reliable. You may apply integrity constraints at the column or table level. The table level integrity constraints apply to the entire table, while the column level constraints are only applied to one. So hopefully that made sense, right? But the biggest takeaway is that maintaining the integrity of the data found in your table or found within your database is super important, and a lot of that then comes in understanding your logic or reasoning for the way that you are structuring your data, which is a completely separate topic that we can talk about at a later time. But again, just sort of key takeaways that I want you to walk away with today is understanding text analytics, right? And being able to analyze text, how that then relates to running queries, right? And then on a deeper level, the way that you're running searches is based off of the way that you are, or just understanding the rules of integrity constraints, right? The way that you are deciding to house and store the data based off of, some rules really. And again, just being mindful that the database of your choice might have their own sort of integrity constraints, or if you are building out your own database, being mindful of the way that you need to constrain the integrity of your data so that, the way that people then populate or enter information into your system doesn't break anything. We don't want to break anything. I think that's all that I got. If you have any questions for me or interested in learning a little bit more about information communications, technology, databases, right, running queries, all things language, large language models, be sure to follow me on Medium at Terrence Latimer, and definitely feel free to like, share, or comment on this post. Hope you're doing well. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.